Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening if you're watching, and thank you for tuning in to Get a Shift On, your podcast all about career transition and career change. I hadn't planned it this week, but I have a fantastic interview with Karen Simpson, who is the owner of my primary and secondary tutor. Karen was a teacher and she left that to start her own business. I actually was interviewing her because I'm writing a book and that's going to come out later this year. And this platform was just an ideal opportunity to record our conversation so I could get all the notes, etc. However, what Karen has said is so good, so informative and interesting that actually I don't think I can keep it to myself and I can never get it out in a book. So please enjoy this episode. If you are a teacher, if you work in the public sector and you are looking to change your career, Karen has some fantastic insights. And I cannot say thank you enough to Karen for giving me such a good interview, such good content for both my book and indeed this episode of Get a Shift On. Please do like, subscribe, share and follow. It means a great deal to me and it means I can help more people and more people get to see this amazing content from people like Karen on the episode. Did you always want to be a teacher?
Yes. Do you know, I think there's a photo of me when I was about maybe 10, and there had been we had a gala week where I lived in this small town, and they always had a fancy dress section for the gala, and I was dressed up as like a traditional teacher with the mortarboard and the cloak and the cane, and I remember thinking, I love this. I mean, obviously that's not what teachers wear now. I thought, oh, I love this. And I've always loved being in charge, as my
Okay.
sister will tell you. Growing up, it's my way or the highway. She was a younger sibling. And it's still the same case probably in our house, So I loved being a leader. I loved having ownership for something. And I remember careers advice at secondary school. So I loved that as a fancy dress, and I thought maybe I could be a teacher. There were no teachers in my family, and then I remember in secondary school, careers advice was dreadful. Some kind of program where you answered about 100 questions, and then it printed out all this. You could be this, this, and this, and everything was arty. You could be a designer, you could be an interior designer, you could be a graphic designer. I mean, I cannot draw at all. So, I mean, I don't know how it came out with that. And one day I remember thinking, right, what am I going to do? I'd kind of forgotten about teaching, and I got out the prospectus or I went online for Edinburgh University. And the one thing I knew categorically was that's where I wanted to study. And I looked through the prospectus and it came primary teaching was in there at Murray House. And I thought, I could do that, teaching, I could do that. And I got in touch with my sister's primary school. I hadn't gone to that school. We moved when I went to secondary. So it wasn't a school that I'd gone to, but she was there. And I got in touch with the school and I said, I wonder if I could come and do some work experience. Could I come and help out in some classes? And they were like, yeah, that would be great. So I used to go along for quite a few afternoons. I went along to the school and I helped out, and that just cemented that this was what I wanted to do. And surprisingly, when I first qualified and I did my probation year, which is your first year out of teaching, the first job that I had, the first job after that, was in that school that I'd done my work experience in, which was like a full circle moment.
Fantastic.
It was very bizarre going back. I think I actually went back to take over a class that the teacher was going on maternity leave, and that teacher was a class that I'd gone into do my work experience in. Crazy.
Yeah. Funny how it kind of works out like that sometimes, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. So
Interesting. What was the reason that you had a career break? Because you said you were pregnant, and was that before your career break or where you were on your career break?
I went back to school. I tried to do teaching, being a mum to one at that point, doing a little bit of tutoring on the side, very, very, very small. And my husband worked away, and it was just quite a struggle. I think I was working 4 days a week, I found it really hard. And I remember that he came home one Friday and I said something like, I don't know how I'm going to do this long term. And he was like, I think I made a comment of, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And he was like, well, just don't go back to work. Don't continue effectively. And I was like, right, could we? Could I do that? So I applied for the career break and it was accepted, which was great. And that's what I did. And that was the opportunity then, I guess, to kind of do a little bit. I did a bit more tutoring then. I kind of grew it a little bit at that point. And I also started offering classes for children under 5. So there was a local theatre where I live, and they were doing classes for music and drama, and they needed someone to help. They were looking for more teachers, and I thought, well, I could do that. And so I did. So I was doing a bit of that, which was great, and doing my tutoring, and I really enjoyed it. So despite taking a career break, I still did a little bit of work. I mean, it wasn't full time or anything like that, but I was, there was no way I was just going to be able to stay at home. I couldn't do that. Um, but it was much easier to manage than trying to be in school and have the kids, which was quite a bit of a juggle.
Yeah, I can imagine. Was there a definitive moment that you thought, that's it, I'm not going back, I can do this, I can be a tutor? What was that? What was that moment, if there
So it
was
was
one?
real, yeah, it was really hard. So I did go back. So I'd only agreed to take the career break for, I think it was 3 years, or no, in fact, I took it for 2 years because you were allowed 5, so I took it for 2. And then I went back. Then I was, yeah, I was struggling a little bit to manage both. By this point, the tuition had grown a wee bit, and I was doing a drop my days. So I was only part time. I was working 3 days in school, and then it was 2 days on the tutoring. And I was really, every time I was in school, I was thinking about what I needed to do for the business. And every time I was at home working on the business, I was thinking what I needed to do for school. I found it really, really hard to manage. And I had the 2 kids by this point as well. So, and then there was a tipping point. I had gone and done a course with something called Highlands and Islands Enterprise, and it was about growing your business because I was finding it really hard to accept that I actually had a business, which I did. I had a part-time business, but I was finding it really hard to accept it was a business. And so I went on this course because I thought at this point I had only on in-person sessions running. I had a very small team of tutors. I had about 4 tutors, and we were hiring a space in a local secondary school. So after school, we could hire the classrooms and the kids could come to us there. And it was great. And it worked really well. But I was getting inquiries from a lot of people that lived quite a distance away who were willing to travel every week to come to the sessions. And I thought, goodness me, I'm sure we can make it more efficient. I'm sure I could get online and tutor them online, and that would save any travel time. And it would mean I could help more children because, across the Highlands. So that was really my focus. And I did this course, and it was through doing the course that it really ignited something in me. I mean, it was there, but I think I was trying to suppress it because it was like, I've got this work in school. I can't get carried away with that. And I've got these 2 children, and just keep in your lane kind of thing. But I absolutely loved that course. It was 10 weeks. It was really intense. And my focus for going on it was to learn how to tutor online. And was it a viable way to grow my tutoring business? Could I make it work? And after that course, I joined the Highland Businesswomen Network. And that's where I really started to accept that I was a businesswoman. I was running a business. And the love of staying in school started to dwindle quite quickly after that. Um, And then eventually I made the decision to leave. That was just before COVID. So October 2019, definitely just before the October holidays, I went in and saw my head teacher and I said, I was crying because I hated what I was doing in one sense. I felt really guilty for leaving, but I was also equally, I knew it was the right thing. And I went in October and I said to her, I need to go. I need to hand in my notice. I need to go. And so I finished at the Christmas, and then it was COVID by the March. And that was, I mean, now when I think about it, I didn't have a crystal ball, but that all lined up beautifully for me for how my business then grew. I was making more money, and not that it's driven by money, but equally that is a big thing because you're leaving behind a guaranteed salary every month and you're going out into the world of self-employment where you got to be everything. You are, you are the secretary, you are the director, you are the salesperson, you are the marketing, you are the whole shebang, you are even the person delivering whatever the product is, service, etc. So it's really scary. But I had grown it to a point where I was making more money in those 2 days tutoring than 3 days in school. So, and I had been for probably about a year, but I hadn't allowed myself to believe it, to acknowledge it, to, you know, maybe it's because it started as a sideline. It started as a little kind of hobby, it started as a little side earner. And that transition to really appreciate it was something more serious than that. I needed outside help a little bit with that. I remember on the course, one of the biggest things I kept saying was, when should I leave? When should I leave the class? When should I go? And nobody would answer it. Nobody would tell me. And I guess maybe that's because it's different for every person. What do you need to be able to leave? Is it about how much you're earning? Is it about just your quality of life? What is the motivator for you that's going to make you take that jump? Because you have to be motivated when you step off one train and get on the other. Because you're driving it, you're driving everything about it, and so I guess it was my gut. At one point, it was just that was it. It was my gut telling me, you got to go. Like it's now. You've got to go. And maybe it wouldn't have been the same if somebody else had just said to me, "Oh, leave now," or you know, maybe you just have to. You'll know. You will know when the time is right. Hopefully.
I love what you've just said. I'm going to come back. I've got a load of questions off the back of that because I think really you've just absolutely just whacked the nail on the head. If someone asked you, when should I leave now? If they were asking you when to leave, would you say that it has to be right for them?
Yeah, I think you need to. I think that's Claire and I. I mean, one of the things I do now is I support other teachers to become what we call, Claire and I, tutorpreneurs. So that's what we call ourselves. And we talk a lot about our why. And you'll hear that if you read a lot of books about
Yeah.
business or
Well,
being an
yeah.
entrepreneur. What's driving you? What's
Yeah.
motivating? Why? And I think it can sound a little bit airy fairy or it can sound a little bit woke, but actually, and that's not me, I'm not really either of those things. I'm very black and white. But I think I think it's really important you understand your motivation for this change, whatever change you're going to make. What is motivating you to do that? And it's really important that you have that super clear in your head because it's not an easy thing to do. I see it a lot on other Facebook groups where it's about exit the classroom or leave this and this is, there's a lot of painting that the grass is greener. And I think it is. I personally have found that. I absolutely do not for 1 second regret making that change. It was the best thing I have ever done. Was it easy? Absolutely not. Has it been difficult? Absolutely it has. But have I stopped? Have I gone back to class teaching? Absolutely not. I will never do that because I know why I left. And I am super passionate about what my why is and why I'm doing it. And I think in those difficult times, that's what keeps you going when you know that. So it is important for you to think about why you're wanting to leave. What is it that you're not enjoying about the current job that you're doing or the current career path that you're on? Why do you want to create something different? You know, and that I think will help you to really focus on making it happen because you
Yeah.
don't want to go back.
Yeah. That motivation, you talk of motivation, and I think that's so important that people have that, the why and the motivation. And you're right, is that I love the fact you said airy fairy and wokey because I think that's I
Hard,
struggle with
isn't it?
that myself. But you do, I find myself saying things like story, journey, all the kind of, you know,
Oh. the
the why, the passion. You go, oh, like, really? But ultimately, they're the right words somewhere along the line.
Well, they are, and it is a journey. We talk about that a lot because it does feel like that, and uh, is it going to have a destination point? That's the other thing that I've been thinking about a lot more now. When am I going to get off the road? How am I going to get to that point where I stop? Because I think as well, when you've been in a career where it's very structured and you've maybe been limited in your choices with that or where you're going, what direction you can take, when you suddenly start carving out your own path and nobody's going to tell you, you can decide exactly where to go and what to do. That's very freeing. I mean, I wanted freedom. That was my why. Like that is my why. Freedom to make my own choices, freedom about having my own time with my family, freedom financially. There's so many things. But equally, it's hard to switch off. And at some point, I'm hoping I'm going to be able to step away, but it's quite addictive having all this freedom and being able to drive things in different directions. And so I am trying to think about my exit point. When do I get off? When do I stop this journey? Because it can't go on forever,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? But all the while you've got that passion for it, then
Yeah.
it's hard to step away, put it to one side, whatever airy fairy term you want to say about it. You talked about the guilt of leaving. So I believe very strongly that teachers, medics, generally people in, I guess, kind of a caring profession, in the vocations, etc., have that guilt. Can you just tell me a little bit about what that guilt was, how it felt, and how you overcame it?
I think when you are working in that public sector and you're in a school, it's such a unit. You're a team, and every part of that team is important, no matter who you are. And you know that when you're not there, it puts more pressure on the team. So if I didn't have very many sick days ever when I was a teacher, I would drag myself in and I would get told to go home because I was clearly not fit to be in work. But, I was so aware of whenever I was off, or I felt like whenever I was off, the impact that was going to have. I'm not saying everybody feels that, but I definitely felt it. And so the thought of leaving felt like I was letting the team down. I also think it was compounded by the fact that when you work in the public sector, you are paid, obviously, but the way that money comes to you, and the way society views things, the NHS is free and education is free. None of it's free. It's costing a fortune, right? But there's that element of, what I was going on to do wasn't necessarily viewed favorably, shall we say, by maybe other people in my profession. How could I be charging for education? And, so there was also that. I felt really guilty that I loved doing that. And, that I really enjoyed that part of, I loved tutoring and the reason I loved it is because I was actually able to teach. It was really challenging in schools. It was really, really hard, and it's only got harder. And I just couldn't give that up. I mean, yes, I was pleased to be paid for it because I can't afford to do it for free. I wish I could. No, that wasn't the motivation, wasn't the money. The motivation was really a lot of it was because I was teaching. I was making a difference. I was struggling to do that in school. And so there was that, all of those elements added up to feeling really guilty when I left. And I think it was very isolating at first when I left because I was still coming to terms with the fact that I was a business owner, still trying to get really comfortable with that. There wasn't a lot of people out there in the tutoring community being vocal about what they were doing or looking for other connections. And I kind of felt like if I went into the business community, people wouldn't really understand. But I learned very quickly that that was not the case.
Yeah.
That really helped with the guilt. It doesn't matter what kind of business you're running, service business, product-based business, you've all got the same challenges when you first start in business because you're, like I said before, you're trying to be everything and everyone, and you're putting lots of energy and lots of time, lots of effort into it. And everyone has the same challenges and the same struggles. So actually, it doesn't matter what you do. You can connect just on the fact that you can empathize with each other. And that was really, really important for helping me to feel more confident and also lessen that guilt that I felt about stepping away.
Do you feel guilty now?
No, do you know what? I have become a lot more confident with it in my head, and especially recently.
You mentioned way back talking about being accepting of having a business, being accepting of feeling like a business owner. Tell me a bit more about that. What was it that, number one, what was it that held you back in the belief that you were a businesswoman? And what was the bit that made you suddenly realize that actually, do you know what? I have a business and I am good at this.
I think, like I said before, because I started it as like a sideline and it was like a little project and it didn't really feel like anything important, it took me longer then as it grew to something more than that to really acknowledge and accept that. And it was different. Once I stepped away from class teaching, because I was very careful about what I said in school, staff room chat. How's life? What you getting up to? I just avoided, for a long time, I avoided ever talking about my tutoring or this course I was doing or other things I was doing, because I wasn't sure what response I was going to get. And if you're not talking about it, you're not acknowledging it. Therefore, it's not really happening. And I didn't have an outlet. I didn't have anyone else to speak to about it. The only time I really felt it was when I was going along to this course every week for those 10 weeks, because I was talking to other business owners who didn't know me and didn't know really my background. And so I could be like, yeah. And they're like, what's your business? They're just like automatically, well, you've got a business. Like, what you do? And so that I couldn't hide as if, no, it's not really happening. It was happening. You know, and it was great because they were like, this is amazing. And, we're all very supportive of each other. And I thought, this is wonderful. I'm loving this. And then once I found the Highland Business Women Network, that just completely changed everything, because then I really started to make connections and I really started to realize it didn't matter what your business was, you could support one another. And it was so important. Naturally, a lot of the people attending these networking events were my clients, potential clients. So it was a great
Yeah.
opportunity to get more parents. And, you know, I remember that when I got my first business card, I still have it, still have a copy of that business card. And it was like, wow, well, if I've got a business card, this must really be it. I've got something worth sharing. It really, and it's all those kind of little steps kind of added up to help me acknowledge and be good with the fact that, yeah, you are a business owner. And then started winning awards. So I won New Business of the Year with Highland Businesswoman in COVID, which was interesting because it was all online. It was pre-recorded, and we were allowed to have people round, but you were supposed to be socially distanced. So my mum and dad came round. I was cooking the dinner. It was on the telly. I still had my apron on. They'd just come in the door and it was announced that I'd won. And it was so bizarre. So, oh my goodness, I've won. But there's no trophy, there's no anything. It's just like, and then somebody came, a taxi arrived at my front door delivering me my award. It was very odd. And then the following year, I won a regional award. I won Sole Trader of the Year for FSB for Scotland. And then the year after that, I won Businesswoman of the Year with Highland Businesswoman. So all of these helped me to be every step of those. It was like, actually, I'm not playing at this. I'm not playing at being a business owner. I really am a business owner. And while I wouldn't say you have to get awards, there's a lot of good that can come out of even applying for an award, because it
For
makes you
sure.
stop and think about, what have I done? How far have I come? because we don't do enough acknowledging of that. We don't count all the little wins, which actually add up to quite a big thing. And it's important, I think, as you're
Really.
on the journey,
Yeah.
David, on the journey.
Following the path.
Yes.
No, you're right. I think that's, yeah. Well, two things. Number one, COVID, wasn't it just like the weirdest time ever? You can look back to then, and the world suddenly just changed. Like, we just went to, an award ceremony where it rocks up in a taxi that you can't touch and you probably wiped it down and, wore a mask to answer the door. It just a bizarre.
I was really, it was, and it was really hard because things were really going well for me at that point, and I was up for something in Edinburgh, quite a big award in Edinburgh, and I'd ordered 500 business cards, and I was taking my dad, and I said, right. My dad used to run his own business, so I kind of think it's in the blood, in the genes, if you like. And I said, right, Dad, I don't think I'm going to win, but we're going to go and you're going to take half this packet and I've got half and we're just going to work this room. You're just going to go around, sell my business. Let's go. And that was due to take place in March of 2020. So safe to say it never did. I won the award, but never got to deliver any of those business cards, not a single one, which was really frustrating. There's all that opportunity. But yeah, it was a crazy,
Mad, wasn't it?
crazy
It's
time.
crazy. I think, yeah, the awards is, you're right. Having those awards, it's not about the awards, but going on that journey, having that reflection as to that and that switch. And you mentioned there's something, and I immediately thought that's the transition from side hustle to business. That's
Yeah.
that key bit where you go, do you know what? I am now making more money with my side hustle. I am doing this. It is what I want to do. Let's go. When you started it, could you ever have imagined that's what you were going to end up doing? Did you have that big picture or not?
No, absolutely not. No, never. And my husband says this all the time. He's like, you know, it's amazing how it's like one domino knocks over something. It's just like it all aligned. If I hadn't started a family, I wouldn't have taken a break from work. I wouldn't have stopped to then have that person, my friend, ask me, would I tutor for her? Because I was very much on a trajectory of I'm going to go into management and I'm going to be running a school before I'm 30 and I'm going to be aiming to get then into area manager, area office. I had a whole plan with regards to remaining in the council I worked for and working my way up in education. Like I really, really, really wanted to make that happen. And now when I stop and think that if I'd ended up down that road, how little freedom and choice I'd actually have, all the stress, the headache, the nightmare that would have been. So it is really, it's amazing how life works out.
And again, what a fantastic point, because I think one of the things that people struggle with in that career transition piece is you and I are very fortunate that we can step back and look back to where we were and know we feel now what we feel. It's the not knowing what you don't know bit. What would you say to someone? So let's say you're having a conversation with a teaching friend, buddy, who is looking to get out, but is like you, like me, driven. What advice would you give to them about getting to where we are now? What kind of how to look at the future, to imagine, the future for them?
I think it does come back to, what do you want and what's not great about what your current setup is and what is it that you really want to get, because the thing as well about starting your own business is that you might have that very clear in your mind why you want to be doing this, but because you are doing everything, a lot of the time you can end up working in your business rather than on your business, and you kind of need to be able to do both at times, but especially the on it if you want to grow it. So, and that's quite hard. I think, for a lot of people, the biggest problem about stepping away is the financial element of it. If you really, really, really don't want to stay where you are, then you need to stop and think about, okay, well, how much do I need to earn? And quite a lot of the time that is it. You need to work out what money do you need to be bringing in every month and be really honest about it. Stop and think about what you're spending on, your lifestyle or cars or holidays or, what is it? You need to get that number, because until you know that number, then it's hard for you to work out what it is that you're going to do, if especially you don't know what you want to do. You've then got to start to think, about your skills. So what skills do you have? What skills are transferable? I think in teaching, that's a really big thing that holds them back, because you don't have to be a tutor. I mean, obviously for me, it was a really easy transition, teacher to tutor, but other people want to do something completely different, but they think, well, I can't do anything different because I'm a teacher and that's the only skills I've got. But you've got so much out of that.
Massive.
There's organizational skills and there's administrative skills and there's
Everything.
technology that you're using. So as a process, I think if you're not sure, sit and work out your number, look at your skills in your CV, what have you got, and then think about, well, what matches up with that? What potentially could you try and do? And then start to really look into that and research it. If you're serious about it, you have to put some serious time in to make it happen. It will not happen just because you want it to. You got to make it happen. But it's absolutely possible. I mean, you can definitely do it. There are hundreds and hundreds, thousands of people out there who have done just that.
More than getting the numbers, what is it once you have those numbers as well that you're willing to give up? Because we all live a very comfortable life. And actually,
Yeah.
teachers, lawyers, medics, allied health, actually earn quite good money. And it's really hard to drop 40K, unless you're right and you said, have that you have to know what you want and you have to have that passion. What did you give up? Did you give up anything?
I didn't have to the way that I did it, really, because I continued to work in school
Yeah,
while
that's
growing it. So I did it I didn't jump. I have real respect for people that jump straight from one ship to the other. I feel like I kind of went to like a little halfway house in between. And I think that's a good place to go if you're not sure about it, or you're just a wee bit worried, or you're a bit more anxious about that transition. Absolutely start small and build it and get it to a point, but you obviously you have to acknowledge that that's going to take some time. So you have to be able to be comfortable with the fact that you're going to have to continue working, and that might be a challenge, but this is where the mindset is really important and the why is really important to get you through that, because there will be a period where it's going to be tough. You might still be in a situation in work that you're not loving, but you've got to see it as a means to an end. You've got to see it as a way to then be able to step away, and that when you do step away, you know that you're not going to have to sacrifice as much. If you can't do that, if you are literally like, I cannot do another day in this thing, that's a different story. And yeah, you absolutely will have to sacrifice something.
And do you think people will find a way? So I'm very much of the belief, because if you've got that why, if you've got that reason, that passion, that you will find the means to that end. You will, if you quit a job, and I speak from experience, that you then have to find something. It's like a driver. And I'd
Yeah,
imagine even going from 3 to 2 days. Okay, so you were earning more in the 2 days than you were in the three, but if you drop those three, there is still a gap.
yeah.
Tell me how you overcame that kind of the gap, or did you just not have to because you were filling it with the tutoring already?
Yeah, like I mean, to me, because it was almost like for a while it was like bonus money. Like I mean, we were really, really comfortable, and I didn't really realize just how comfortable we were. I didn't realize what exactly the tutoring was bringing into that. And I was very fortunate because I literally finished, in school in the January. By the March, COVID happened, and then my business exploded, because at that point everyone needed to homeschool and everyone was like, oh my God. And so my tuition business grew like 5 times the size in about 6 months. And therefore, money was then definitely not an issue. It was managing all of that while still homeschooling. I was very fortunate like that. But you're right, when you take away the safety net, that's definitely a motivator for you to work a lot harder to make it happen. I do know that, I mean, I've got teachers that have done just that have handed in their notice, and it has forced them to grow their business much faster. The transition is hard because you have to set your own routine. You have to create that out of something. You have to work a plan of how you're going to, which is why it is important that you do put a little bit of thought into it before you just don't just, well, you can just walk in and hand in your notice, but I would hope you would maybe have some consideration before you do that. If you don't, I mean, it'll certainly make you go for it. But there's also, like, because what you said back there about your program and things like that, and is it needed? And it absolutely is, because a lot of the time you're looking for that mentorship, you're looking for someone to help you with these stages, and you'll definitely achieve things quicker when you have that support, I think, for the majority of people, than if you don't have it. I noticed that with my own things that I do support teachers becoming tutors. Those that are more involved with me definitely get there quicker,
Yeah.
just because they have that
That's yeah.
Extra support.
Yeah. And if we talk about that, if we go back to the fluffy wokeness, I kind of one sort of phrase that I'm looking at is that I close the gap between the thinking about and the doing. Now
Yes.
that's what I'm really doing, is that I hate my job, I don't want to be doing it, I want to do this. How do I get to that next?
Because some people are like you say you can lead a horse to water and you can't make it drink. Well, if you led me to the water, I'd be drinking, because that's how I am, and I'm going for it. But there are people that need that help to do that. Yes, they want to know, but they need just a bit more of your support, a bit more of your time, a bit more input. And so it is important.
Yeah, I think so. And conveniently, you talked about planning the future, which is kind of the next step. You obviously had the tutoring, you had that in mind. Did you have a structured plan about okay, COVID, I guess, kind of threw some curveballs in there and accelerated quite quickly. Did you have a plan? Did you actually write down a business plan? Did you kind of have all of that in mind? And then how much of that have you followed? How much has it changed?
Hate business plans, but I do think they can serve a purpose, and especially if you're wanting finance or any kind of investment, you absolutely have to have one. But it's not my favorite thing to write. It'd be like writing the school improvement plan at school. I would absolutely, it's just like, oh, I hate doing this. Um, so I didn't have an official business plan, but I did have goals or objectives. And it's interesting because before COVID, my plan, being a primary teacher, was to actually, and having delivered these classes to under fives, was to develop my business into the under fives market. So I was going to stick with primary tutoring, but I was going to go into under fives. And I had created a program, and I had scheduled for some video and images of these kids do my program. I was going to get it out there. I had a name, I had a whole plan of how I was going to launch it, everything, which was due to be filmed in the March. So I finished in the January and it was due to be filmed in the March. Of course, that never happened. And it came up on and now as a business, I went from primary to secondary. So we do primary and secondary instead. And that was never the plan. And it came up on my Facebook memories recently, that a post that I put up about it. And I said I'd love a sliding doors moment. I would love to be able to, that movie Sliding Doors, where I'd love to know where would it have gone if COVID had never happened and I'd gone down that under fives market? What would it be like now? Because you'll have lots of ideas in business and things will come up and it might change you and put you on a different path. But that idea doesn't necessarily go away. It just gets parked for a while. I don't know if I'll ever go back to it, but yeah, it's funny. I don't have an actual. I have a plan now. I have a much more strategic plan now, but in the beginning, probably not as much as I maybe should have. There we go. Being honest.
I think
Yeah.
that's you kind of you need some kind of plan. You need the goals. You have to know where you're going. But I think the ways in which you get there vary from person to person, and there are options. There are
Yeah.
options there. And I think that's the interesting thing. With regards to the plans and kind of the moving forward, now you've got more structured, more strategic plan. Are you 100% committed to that, or are you happy that there might be bumps along the road?
I really hope that what I want to do happens, like more than I've ever wanted it for anything else I've done. I think that's why I'm finding things quite difficult just now, because I've got my finger, if you say, in a lot of different pies, right? And yeah, I know where I want to put my whole hand, right? And I can't yet because I've got to keep in all of these at the same time. So that's tricky. It's a lot of juggling and managing just now, but I think I keep it in my head that this is only for a short time. I'm not going to say how long that time is. I won't, it could be a year, it could be 2 years, it could be 6 months, but I know it's not going to be forever. And I really hope for this case that I do manage to do what it is I'm wanting to achieve and that it doesn't get knocked sideways or I don't get put off anywhere along the way. I really want to try and stick to this.
Yeah. There is inevitably going to be bumps in the road. Hope not anything like COVID again. Do you think that you feel better prepared than you were 3, 4, 5 years ago to deal with that and being able to reach that final destination?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that just comes with confidence as well. I feel, I mean, I've never lacked confidence. My 9-year-old is very much a chip off the old block on steroids, probably. He's got so much confidence, he could give everyone confidence. I love it. But there is definitely a confidence that's come with doing what I've done for the last, 10 years or so. And so I do feel much better about, I believe in myself more. I am not going to be swayed or put off in the way that maybe I might have been influenced before. I believe in my worth. I believe I know what I'm talking about. And not that I didn't always think that, but I think it just comes with time. I don't think you can buy that. I think you just have to live it. I think you have to have gone through it. I think you just have to have experienced it. And then that as part of it, I think.
But there's that underlying confidence that you kind of go, yeah, I can, and I know that I can. I'm not sure how I'm going to do it, but I know I can. And I think that is probably a trait of entrepreneurs and people that leave their careers.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I hadn't really thought too much about my traits and the effect that that maybe has for other people. And when I started, I guess I'm not very good at relating to people that are kind of like me. I don't know if that's the case for everyone. Probably shouldn't admit that out loud. But so when I meet people that are running a business, I just assume that they're going to be like me and they're really driven. I just assume that. And not everyone is, obviously. We're not all alike. And it's really interesting. I've come across quite a lot of people since I've started supporting other teachers and tutors. And I've had conversations with them or helped them with different things or done a wee coaching session or just a chat, right? And it's amazing. They'll be like, you've just got such good energy. And when I speak to you, I just feel really motivated. I just really want to do something. And I'm like, wow, does that make you feel like that? And, I've loved hearing that because I never stopped to think, a lot of the time, my traits have been seen maybe more negatively, or you're too driven, or you're too this, or you're too that, you're too outspoken, it's not always been a positive. But when I step into the business world, it's different. It's like, those things are celebrated, because that's the things you need to drive your business forward. It's not a negative anymore. It's an absolute something that people want to have. They want that skill. And so there's a lot of confidence that can come from just having that acknowledged. And I'm like, and that's really helped me to be like, well, yeah, I am who I am. I'm not going to be sorry for it. And you're damn right, I'm going to be doing this, that, or the next. And yes, I do know my stuff. And, that's been unexpected. I wasn't expecting that to come from the things that I've been doing more recently with supporting others, but it's a really great benefit.
A great byproduct of it. And you touched on something really interesting there, which I see parallels in teaching and healthcare, where those kind of traits are seen as negative. And I fear that it's seen as a negative because it's seen as a negative by the people above the higher up chain who are probably threatened by such energy, positivity, and drive. Because I don't know teaching as well, I have a fairly good idea, but that middle kind of management, deputies, heads, etc., within teaching, very much like the management in healthcare, they are there by longevity, not necessarily good luck, good skill. Not all of them. Let's get that straight. And as such, don't understand the you and I coming in going, I want your job. In fact, I don't want your job. I want to be your boss. So in the kind of public sector, that's seen as a negative trait because it's a threat. Whereas you're right, in business, you move over to that, and that is exactly the drive that puts all the certificates on your wall.
Well, exactly that. You need, you have to have that self-motivation. You have to be, you can't be a wallflower. You need to put yourself out there. Nobody's going to know about you if you don't. You need to get visible. You need to get seen. There's a lot of competition out there. How do you stand out? And it's really refreshing now that I don't feel bad about having those traits. I don't apologize for being like that anymore. It is what's got me where it's got me, and it is positive. And it is positive
Rightly
not
so.
just for me, for other people. Like it has a positive impact for them. If it motivates them to want to do more, brilliant. I'm delighted by that.
And you are clearly helping people.
Yes,
Having
and
that
yeah.
mentorship, and I recognise some of that because I have those chats with my friends and colleagues too. And sometimes you just need to say something out loud for someone else to say, okay, have you thought about this or that? There's a whole world of help and information I think that we as business owners can use each other for.
I think as well, that in itself as well can be overwhelming. And sometimes you can bring on so much, it's hard to know what to do. And I think it is important you kind of narrow it down a little bit, and you do start, you focus in on who's resonating most with you, or who's you really, you don't try and listen to everyone, because sometimes I think when you try and listen to everyone, you hear no one. You need to just kind of pick who's your vibe, who's your team, who's your tribe, whatever the word is. And I've done a lot of that. I mean, there was a wee while there where I had an awful lot going on my socials, or my email inbox was like I'd subscribed to about a gazillion different people, and I was just like drowning in advice, and it was a bit too much, and I've peeled it right back. And I think as well, it's hard. You just sometimes you want to go like dive in and take everything, I need to hear everything, and you're worried you're going to miss something, the FOMO of but the business world. But sometimes it's too much, and you do need to be a bit more succinct, and you do need to kind of filter it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That filter, I think, is a really key trait for the success of yourself. Because you're right, I do it regularly. I go through my inbox and I'm like, unsubscribe, 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 unsubscribe. Where did that all come from? What did I click? Where have I signed up for that? And some of them I know that it's like, oh, LinkedIn masterclass for this, Facebook masterclass, SEO masterclass. Yeah, I want the free download, just not the crap that goes with it afterwards.
Yeah.
And I
And I
read
don't
one
miss
or
it.
two.
I got rid of loads. I don't miss it. I don't feel like I'm missing out. For a while it was like, well, I need to be in that world, and I need to be in that person's world, and I should hear what they're doing. I've actually taken so much away, and I feel better. I actually genuinely feel better for it. And it's only in the last 6 months I did this. Um, I don't need to be hearing from you and you and you and you and you and you on a daily basis. It's not really doing me any favors. I've thought, what do I really need? And so this year I've signed up for one membership, which is to do with money, which I'm really enjoying. I've signed up to that for 6 months, and I'm really enjoying being part of that. It's not overwhelming, it's not too much. You can be as in it as much as you want. So I'm doing that. And then there's one other thing that I signed up to, which was to do with setting goals and meeting goals. And I've stuck with that. But those are my only two things. Everything else I've just stopped following, or stopped subscribing, or completely zoned it out. And
You can only take on so much information
oh, you can, definitely.
for want of trying. We all want to be all absorbent, but
Yeah.
you can't. You can't. Do you remember when you first started what your biggest fear was?
What was my biggest fear? You mean like when I actually stepped away from, I mean, I've had moments like, I mean, when I started, I didn't really, when it first started as a sideline, it wasn't really something, I wasn't fearful about anything. I didn't think it was anything in the first place. I guess when I left and gave up my full-time job and decided I was going to be a business person, there was a moment where I had to increase my prices because I had to start charging VAT. Not because I was making any more money, just the VAT man was. And I remember being so concerned about how to pass that cost on. Because 20% is quite significant on top of what you're charging. I'm not giving them any more for their money. They've just got to pay this and that's it. And I did think for a while, should I absorb a part of it? Should I absorb 10%? Just pass on 10%? And I was like, no, I can't do that. It doesn't make any business sense. VAT has nothing to do with me. It's just a cost that I've got to pass on. I'm just going to have to do it. And if people leave because of it, they leave. But that fear was almost crippling because it's the first time I'd ever had to do that. And I was really concerned about how many people would no longer work with me. And I think 2 to 3 left out of 200 families. Like that's nothing. So, but at the time it was really worrying. So sometimes and now if I think, well, I've got to put my price up or I've got to change whatever, well, I'm just going to have to do it and that's it. It's the way life is. But at the time, when it's the first time you've done that, I think the first time you do anything that feels major, there's always going to be an element of fear and an element of doubt there. But it's not a bad thing. It's just part and parcel of running your business or anything you're doing, really.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. You mentioned that your dad was a businessman as well. Thinking back to when you kind of first started the tuition bit and the business bit, did you seek his advice? Did you seek anyone else's advice? Did you tell your close friends? I know you said at school you kind of kept out of the staff room, which I understand. Yeah, did you ask people their opinions of what you were doing? Did they offer their opinions of what you were doing?
Yeah, I did with my dad quite a lot. I still do. I'll still phone him sometimes. He's retired now, but he ran a business with my uncle for a long time, and they had to diversify quite a lot. His business was in insurance, and the company that him and my uncle worked for went bust, and they set up themselves. And then obviously they bought and sold houses, they did pensions. There was obviously the housing crash, so they had to diversify. So he's got a lot of experience. It might not be in the same sector, but he knows about that. But it's interesting because recently was setting up the newest business, the Scottish Tutors Association. I got in touch with him and I said, we need to set this up, and was talking about company's house and limited company and structures and stuff like that. And my dad was like, "Oh, we got someone to help us with that. We paid someone to help us set up the company the way we wanted it. You just need to go and get someone." And I said, "Oh, I don't think I do." I said, "I've got ChatGPT and I've got my prompt and it's just told me everything." I said, "I'm just checking with you that this sounds, and my dad was like, "Oh, wow, that's amazing." So there's certain elements of business that will never change, but there's also elements of business that is changing and evolving. So you can seek advice, but that advice won't necessarily always be appropriate as time moves on. My dad is brilliant and he's a great sounding board, and it is important you've got people, you've got a network, like somewhere to reach out to. I fully believe that because I didn't have that, or I didn't feel I had that quite in the same way when I started. But yeah, I think it is important, and I do value my dad's advice a lot of the time.
When you talk about not when you talk about not mentioning it in the staff room, what was stopping you?
Doing that. Um, I had a few run-ins, shall we say, colleagues, comments that were made, looks that were given. You get a feeling. And there was a couple of times with people I was very close with, and it kind of threw me a little bit because I hadn't really thought, I hadn't really thought that there was anything wrong with what I was doing. And there isn't anything wrong with what I was doing. I also didn't think that other people would perceive it as wrong. So that was really off-putting. Once I'd felt that, kind of, it threw me off guard to the point that I thought, I don't know who's going to be okay with it and who's not, so I'll just not talk about it. So I didn't. That was really hard, and still now, I am conscious with other teachers. I want that to change. I'm not apologising, obviously, for what I've done, but I am conscious that the climate for some people that are still in education is, I've taken the easy route out, or what I'm doing is not, is not okay. And so I really want to change that. I think the problem is that with what I'm doing, it's viewed as threatening to education. And that's why I'm so passionate about changing that whole language and that setup and it becoming a partnership, an important one, I think, tuition and education together. And that I'm hoping will change the entire climate for what it feels like. And it won't be a threatening position any longer. It will be a collaborative, coming together.
Which is so much more beneficial to the children who ultimately you are helping.
Yes. And they're the only ones that matter in this scenario.
It's like the NHS and private healthcare.
Yeah,
Work
I've
together,
learned. Yeah,
kind of, you're helping the person that's sick, which is, the whole raison d'etre of the healthcare system.
yeah. I never thought about that, but wow, because again, I never realized some of the differences between private and public healthcare, even just the way those systems operate. I don't know enough about it, but I've seen a few documentaries and things, and to me it would, yeah, that seems like a very
Yeah. And
obvious one.
I guess there's a similar between kind of state education and private education. And if you can afford private education, great. I was fortunate enough to be privately educated for slightly different reasons, just being able to afford it. And I wouldn't change that because I certainly wouldn't be sat here right now. But I have no problem with the state education system. I have no problem with the private education system because they both serve a purpose and an
Absolutely.
important purpose. So yeah, I think that's really interesting and fantastic that you want to change that outlook. How nice would that be? Refreshing, so the next
Oh my
person,
goodness.
you know,
Yeah.
that gets to go and start their own tutoring business, fashion business, whatever, can go into the staff room and go, you know what, I am passionate about this, and I'm going to go and do it. And it is the same again. And I don't want to keep drawing the comparisons, but healthcare and education is very similar because people have that guilt, people have that worry and that fear because it is like people feel that they are abandoning a sinking ship. And it's nothing to do with that at all. It's, one, two, three, four, hundreds of people leaving the service are not going to make any difference because there's fundamental issues that make the system broken, not the teachers or the medics within it.
Absolutely. And I think if I was a different, there's a lot of people that I still know that are in education and they care very passionately about the same things that I do. They're able to go in to work each day and almost compartmentalize and ignore a lot of what's there and just do their job. And I really commend that because I don't have that in me to do that. Because if I did, I wouldn't have left. I'd still be there. But it's just not how I'm made up. And I find it really difficult to ignore a lot of those things and be okay with it. And I think, it's okay that I wasn't okay with it. It's okay that I've left. It's also okay that there's lots of people that are able to be okay with it and stay because we need them to stay. It's okay wherever you are in that position. It shouldn't be seen as a negative on either side.
Absolutely. And I think that's, I always say thank goodness for those staff in whatever role, whatever job sector that want to do it forever and a day. There are teachers who've taught for 30 years. There's radiographers, there's doctors, there's nurses who have been, through the length of service. And thank goodness for them, because
Yeah.
we really would be stuck without them. But it isn't for everyone. And that's the key. So,
Yep, absolutely.
yeah, that's really, really interesting. I think the way that other people make you feel about what you do is so crucial. And until you get again to where you are now and you can look back with such positivity and say, I am where I am and I would not change it.
No, absolutely not.
What's the future that you can tell me?
Well, I I mean ultimately I want to get to a point where I am I've got the Scottish Tutors Association running, and achieving the vision and the objectives that I really hope it's going to achieve. And love that to be, I mean, it sounds really airy fairy again, but I'd love it to be my legacy. Like I did literally a few years back, I thought, what am I doing this for? Like, what's my exit plan going to be? What do I want to have achieved by the time I step away from the business? Is it just going to be this business? What's it going to be? And I decided that I wanted to make a bigger impact. I wanted to make a bigger difference. And could I do it? Was I able to do it? And I did have a lot of doubts at the start. I still am having doubts. I think that's normal. But with each week and month that goes by, and I make more connections and I bring more people into it, and I start to think about what's available out there and what might be able to happen and how I'm going to make it work, I'm really you fired up again. And I'm like, no, I've got to do this. So I'm hoping, that's eventually the only thing I'm plowing my energy into. So the other things that I'm involved in just now, I'm really loving being involved in those, but I don't see that something I'm going to continue right up to the very end. Really, I want to get to a point where I'm putting my energy into just that, just to the STA really, and getting that to somewhere that then when I do eventually step away, it will continue and all that work will continue. And I would I would absolutely love that to be the case. I really, really, really hope. I wish I had a crystal ball. I wish I could just look and see, yes, you do it. I don't need to know how, but yes, you get there. I'd love to know, but obviously that's not going to happen. So,
But
yeah.
some of the fun and the excitement is not having that crystal ball.
Yes, that's true. I'm just such a control freak, David. Like I wasn't one of these mums that waited until they gave birth to knew what they were having. I had to know because I needed to be super organized and super prepared. And, I didn't have names picked out, none of that. I just wanted to know what was coming and I wanted to know what I was going to be doing, etc. So I do find it really hard. I'm not great with surprises. Um, so yeah, it's kind of that's the hardest bit probably for me is
Not knowing.
what's gonna happen. Yeah,
But excitement nonetheless.
it is exciting. It really is. And yeah, I feel, a few months back it was quite tough, and I did have an awful lot on my plate. Um, and things have got easier. I've got better at saying no, which is not something I'm very good at, but I really am so much more focused now on is this benefiting me? Is this benefiting the business? Is it benefiting what I want to try and do? And if it's not, it's a no. I'm not doing it. That brings the guilt back in, but I'm getting there. I've said a few no's. I've said a few, which is good.
Much like the unsubscribing and the filtering of emails and newsletters, etc., the saying no is right up there. Because you can't help everyone, you can't please everybody, and in trying to do that, you inevitably help no one, please no one, and end up miserable.
Well, that's it. And it seems really selfish, but you don't have an infinite amount of time every week. I wish I did sometimes, but you have to work within your means. And at the end of the day, you have to try and keep in perspective why you started. We're coming right back full circle to that why. But why did I start? I wanted the freedom to make my own choices, the freedom to steer wherever I'm going to go. If I keep taking on everybody else's, I can't steer in the direction I want to go because I'm too much about this, that, or the next. So yeah, I think learning to say no is going to be important for me over the next wee while, and hopefully I get a bit more comfortable with it.
It's a hard one. Could you sum up your journey in one sentence?
Oh my goodness. I almost want to chat GPT that. I want to know what it would say in one sentence. Crikey. I would say it's been at times challenging, but so, so worth it. I don't regret it. I don't regret leaving for a second. Like, I just don't. And I think that's really crucial. I hope that anybody else that makes that step feels the same. I hope you don't ever wish that they, because you could go back if you wanted, but I hope that nobody ever does because it's such a big leap of faith, and it's really important, I think, that you don't regret that you did it. So, yeah, that's what I would say. Challenging, but very worth it.
I think that's perfect. And your top tip or the best piece of advice to give someone that is thinking about making that change or making a change?
I would say, yeah, get your why and get some good people around you because you're going to need that. Don't be frightened to reach out. You need to make connection. It's really, really, really important, or it's so isolating, I think, when you become your own person. So get your why really clear, reach out and make some connections, and take that support when it comes.
Karen, thank you. Really appreciate it.